우리 완전 달라 baby 운명을 찾아낸 둘이니까 우주가 생긴 그날부터 계속 무한의 세기를 넘어서 계속 우린 저승에도 아마도 생에도.
Hello, Keyforge players. We're back for another Archons Corner. Today, myself, Dr. Sheep, is here, and I've got Ewok Jr.
Hello, Keyforge community.
And Drazcore.
Hey guys, how's it going?
And now we're looking for Ewok to make Wookiee noises.
Oh, Wookie, 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 Wookie.
All right, and that's the cast.
You know, that was probably our best cast yet, I have to say.
We'll put that up on a Patreon exclusive.
No, so this week we do have a really interesting discussion, actually, with some numbers too. So I'm pretty excited by it. I do want to address something for our AC community that's out there before we kind of get going. And that is, we'll call it the elephant in the room. So some of you may have noticed that there happened to be a podcast that dropped, and it had three letters that this group doesn't want to talk about, but FAB or Fab, Flesh and Blood. And
Flash in the pan.
Flash in the pan. I mean, however you want to go ahead and describe it. And so there was a little bit of concern about the AC community as a whole. And, you know, are we going to continue podcasting? We haven't seen you guys or heard from you over break. So one, there is an episode that we recorded last week. It was supposed to actually release today, which is January 13th, Thursday. And
by the time they listen to this, they'll listen to that. So you're already on you don't need.
Again, that should be there, but I know that there was some concern. We did take a break over the holiday. There was some sickness. Obviously, there's a lot of sickness that's out in the public. We also had some people who are traveling. So no, we still love this game. We are highly committed to it. But I will also say that there are a couple individuals from our AC group that have passion for being able to communicate with other games, and Fab happens to be one of those. So Flesh Blood, there you go. So you will see podcasts that will be coming out in the stream from Archon's Corner that has to do with Fab, and you'll still see Keyforge. So don't feel that we're going away, but I at least want to be able to address it so that you don't freak out. I know that Keyforge through FFG is on hiatus, but there's tons that's happening online. And I know that we meet regularly here on Sundays, Tuesdays, Wednesdays. And, you know, this is a great game that we love, and we'll continue to go ahead and create this podcast as long as we can. But I at least wanted to be able to identify and to talk about that. Gentlemen, what do you think?
Totally. And I'm not going to take some undue credit right now. So I'm going to claim that because on our Festivus episode, I said, y'all should be coming out here to play with us. We actually hit the limit. We hit our maximum number of players playing earlier this week in a night. So we had a lot of folks come out, and it was a lot of fun just chatting with people, and some regulars, some new folks. It was a really good time playing Keyforge together.
I was there. It was a blast to be able to see the numbers and to just have fun as we were going through. And how can you be sad when you're cracking open a deck and playing it? That deck that I opened will probably never, ever see the light of day again, but I had an absolute blast as we played the 4 rounds that were there. So come join us.
My sadness should decrease now as I am out of Age of Ascension, or my sadness is going to increase because all these other sets just don't compare to Age. I'm not sure what's going to happen here.
We shall see. Great experiment.
See, I'm on the other side though, Sheep, because I have part of the Ollie's AOA that I have been saving. I've opened a couple, but it's painful to be playing, especially when you get no Amber control. There's some fun decks, but I've been having so much fun with DT. And people talk about DT is good, bad. I just opened this 54 SAS DT, and I had blast. I still don't know how it went 3-1. I will honestly say that, but the right matchup at the right time. I think that paper, rock, scissors can really play a piece, and then being able to know what your outs are. I think that people oftentimes will discard cards in sealed that frankly that hidden information holding onto a card may end up being the difference in the game. So that's my little tidbit for today, but stop on out. It was an absolute blast to see everyone and to see a full amount. Sheep, you locked it so no one else could get in. So way to go, everyone.
Yeah, and I probably have to give actual more credit to JM, who's been advertising for us a whole bunch, trying to get more people to come in, and they have. So it's been good.
All right, so for today, outside of that, real quick, everyone stay safe. I know that I just saw a little message for Wisconsin COVID numbers that we were the highest one day new cases that has happened, and that's scary. So if you're able to still play, please be safe, have fun. We're jealous, and for everyone who can't, stay healthy and stay safe and do the best that you can. So we're with everyone through this pandemic, and we will make it through it. We're going to be able to talk Keyforge tonight or whenever you're listening to this. But also we look forward to be able to get back together. Speaking of, we had a really cool week for ABR. So all three of us, Draz, I think you're actually one of the team captains for ABR. Right. And one of the weeks was Artifact Week. I will give a little tentative shout out for Help from Future Self, episode 137, Borrowed. They went ahead and talked a little bit about the artifact, but they did it before the event actually happened. Blake was my captain. So shout out to Blake. Thanks for being team captain. Sorry, I didn't take you to the top 4. But the actual event that we wanted to talk about, we gathered some data. And Draz, you did a ton of the work here. But let's go ahead and just kind of describe. So for this event, it was Artifact Week. And the premise behind it was that each person is going to go ahead and grab one artifact to add to the deck. You will add that artifact at the beginning of the game. So it will be in play to start the game, and it will constantly be in play. So during the game, you can use cards like Hawk that's going to go ahead and gain you Amber. So there's benefits for doing that. You have Reclaimed by Nature that can still purge it, but it's going to come right back. So that has a direct impact, and it changes the game. And I thought it was a really, really fun format that ABR put out. But they put a little stipulation that there's only certain artifacts that could be used, and that each team of 12, each of the artifacts on that list could only be used twice. So you had to think critically about which of the artifacts is going to best play with your deck or play against it. And then everyone can't use the same artifact. So I thought that was really nice. All of these artifacts, everyone should know, are symmetrical. So they're artifacts that upon being played, they will have an impact on both players. And as was kind of talked about in the Help from Future Self episode, these artifacts are either helping both players, similar to the card Howling Pit, where you're each getting an extra card that's being drawn, or they are hurting both of the players, such as cards like Universal Keylock, where the key cost is increased by 3 for both players. So, gentlemen, do you want to go ahead and read through the list of good artifacts that were able to be chosen, and then should we tell them?
Can I go on my spiel on why I didn't like the format?
You can. Go for it. I will give you that, and then we'll go into it. Go for it.
So I did not like the format. This is just as bad in my book as NetDeck, and they are both the antithesis of what Keyforge is to be. Playing random decks with the cards that are in them. This constructed deck, or often happens in the net deck, is you're picking a deck that can have broken enhancements because you get to assign enhancements. That is just the opposite of what Keyforge is. Cool. I'm really cool. Things can happen, and there's lots of interesting stuff, but the amount of effort and thought that can be put into deck selection and meta and whatnot are closer, but the games people are often playing have, which is active metas, deck selection, deck building, and exactly why I'm in Keyforge is I want nothing to do with any of that. So these weeks come up, and I straight up I wait until the last second, and then I make my captain, who was Drazkor, my captain, and thank you for taking me to the finals. I just go, give me a deck, because I can't even get myself to have enough interest to pick a deck for these. Just don't interest me.
And I
But that's me.
that, right?
And I'm not unwilling to play the format, but I am unwilling to put in extra time preparing for it.
That's interesting to me. So my headphone set went out for a sec there, so sorry, guys. For me, I see this very similar to what you had run for Quarantine Daily. So that's interesting that I wanted to find decks that I already had that would play to an advantage by going ahead and grabbing a different artifact that was here. So I liked that challenge. So that's interesting that you saw this as the antithesis of Keyforge. And I saw it as different from Keyforge, but I also saw it as being acceptable or a good little outlet as we're kind of in this hiatus period.
Now, when we ran a similar event during Daily, it was you picked an artifact that was in your deck and started it in play.
I know.
It is a hugely different game when you can add a card that isn't from any of your houses and does not have to be from the set you are playing into your deck. That is a whole nother realm of thought that just not something that interests me. Like, I understand why a lot of people love it. That's their kind of jam. Not my jam.
How many
toe jam? I don't want it.
So I'm going to go ahead and do a survey of everyone who's listening. I know I can't see your hand, but I imagine a lot of people would raise their hand and say that they enjoy finding a way to break a game, whether it's Keyforge or whether that is a board game that we're playing. But that's what we as gamers like to do, is we like to find the way to break the game. Is that not what's happening here in this week for Artifact Week?
So I certainly, playing board games and such, like to maximize benefit to myself within the rules, right? Sure. But I like to do it within as written. This isn't the rules. So
fair. Okay.
It's just not for me. And and to tell you the truth, if this game even had one of those mechanics where it's like you get to pick the order of your deck, or you get to pick your starting hand,
or a sideboard,
I might not be into this game at all, because that's just a level of constant planning and thought that is fun on occasion, but just doesn't interest me on a regular.
I agree 100% with that last comment. On occasion, the one time for 1 week, I'm perfectly fine with thinking about it. I just don't want it to be every time. And that's, I think, what ABR did. It made us think differently. I enjoyed it. What do you think, Drazkor? Let's bring you in.
Yeah, I mean, definitely. I enjoyed it, but yeah, it was definitely I enjoyed it because it was different for, a short period of time. It's interesting because I see both the arguments in terms of, hey, sort of like the dailies where there was an interesting restriction, but yes, to your point, Sheep, you are modifying the deck, right? Like, what I brought was kind of silly and wasn't intended by the designers, right? And it is a different ball game a little bit than finding a good deck or opening a good deck. So I enjoyed it, but yeah, I wouldn't be like, let's play this every week by any stretch.
Very well. All right, let's jump down and let's share the different artifacts that were available. I'm going to start with the band, and if you guys want to go ahead and do the good afterwards. So obviously, the fine folk over at ABR saw that not all symmetrical artifacts would be good and could potentially really, really lead to some bad games that potentially never end or have big issues. So they banned or eliminated cards such as Snag's Mirror, Dry the River, the Quiet Anvil, Quixel Stone, your beloved Heart of the Forest, General Order 24, and Doom Sigil. So straight up, those are artifacts not available, not an option for the team.
Yeah, now most of those made a ton of sense to me. I actually wasn't quite sure about Doom Sigil. That one to me, I was like, oh, why is that one banned? I'm curious on your guys' thoughts.
Is Doom Sigil's the one that goes out of play when there's no creatures?
Yes.
So you just get into this awful loop.
I forgot about that.
Yeah, you have all the creatures. It goes off the board. So like technically, the rules say you put it into play, and then it goes out of play, and you're in a stupid infinite loop. Technically, I think it is logically a playable card, but it does have some the technical stuff that doesn't work well.
That makes total sense. I totally forgot that was a condition, actually. I just remembered it gave my guys poison and didn't do much.
Yeah, so for everyone who's not aware, Doom Sigil is a Shadows artifact power. Each creature gains poison. If there are no creatures in play, destroy Doom Sigil. And so that's what Sheep's talking about is no creatures in play, especially starting the game. It's this infinite loop of trying to get it in, trying to get it out, and how that's going to go ahead and work. I hadn't thought about that, so I could see that as an issue.
Mm-hmm.
The other one that stood out to me was the Quiet Anvil.
Yeah.
It seemed very different from the other choices. So I don't know. There has to be a reason why. But shall we go ahead? Quiet Anvil is also a Shadows artifact. And I should say, this one has a printed amber. All artifacts, when they're put in play, we did not count the amber if it was on it or if it wasn't. So this one has a printed amber, and it says, item, key cost -2 amber. After a player forges a key, destroy the Quiet Anvil. So it would just be keys costing 4?
Is it because it just makes
key cheats and
already close to broken Coda on Tame Suite just like dumb? Like it just you only have to cycle for 4 amber or 5 amber each time to forge 7.
Correct,
so
and so
significantly less to fire that. I don't know if that's I don't know the reasoning behind it because like functionally it's no different than Keylock was.
That's what I saw too. I just thought maybe the key cheats and the ability to actually cycle, have a 1-turn kill. There are a number of people in ABR have some very, very good decks, and potentially
that's my
the
only
reason.
guess is because there are some decks out in the world that can first turn or second turn never win, and that just makes that
higher probability.
The likelihood to where that's not a fun game, right? Like, okay, let's start, and I win.
Wow. I didn't get to play a card, right?
We'll get into not fun games that you just win in a bit, though.
Uh-oh.
I mean, there was definitely still broken stuff, although I just see how that...
Do you guys want to go ahead and share what artifacts were able to be used?
Yeah, so maybe what I'll do, so I don't go through the list twice, is as we're going through it, just talk about how many times this artifact was used.
Yeah.
So let's say I'll go. You know what? I'll go bottom up. So we'll make this. We'll start with 0 uses. So the artifacts with 0 use. And by the way, there are 96 players in this season's ABR. So just have that in the back of your mind when you're thinking about how many uses for each of these. And as was mentioned earlier, each team can use an artifact no more than twice, right? 8 teams times 2, max uses is 16. All right. So the artifacts that were legal but had 0 uses: Ragwarg, Orb of Invidious, First Scroll, and Tharia. How do you even say this one? Sarium?
Sarium, yep.
Sarium. Therarium. There you go. We were actually talking a bunch about First Scroll and trying to figure out if there was a good way to use it. We had some thoughts, but we didn't end up pulling the trigger on it.
That's interesting because our team also had a few different discussions when we were play testing, looking at First Scroll, because there were some real big Amber Burst decks that we were seeing, and just utilizing it in order to go ahead and shut that down. I had looked at it, but I also sat it out.
Doesn't that card totally, though, is completely reliant on your opponent playing a deck with creatures,
Yes. Yes, it does.
right? Because
Right,
each creature only captures one, so you're not going to put it with other artifacts. We're talking about Whirlpool. I captured my own amber. I'm going to pass it back to you. There's nothing great going on there. Maybe with Curiosaurus, there's some goof stuff that can happen, but still, you're putting your own amber on. And if they don't have any creatures, that's a card where if I'm play it, my deck doesn't really need its creatures. Playing something with Coda, card's dead.
Yeah.
And for those who aren't aware, I can say the first scroll is a Saurian artifact. Item, after a player forges a key, each creature they control captures one from its own side.
Also looking, I can see why the other ones we didn't talk about, Oreg, Orb, and Cerarium, which are all just slow down cards. It prevents things from weeping or damages for weeping. They're universal to you as well, and what kind of deck needs to just slow people down a little? I don't see where those fit into this. I can see why they were all skipped.
We did talk about Ragwarg and Dust Imps, right? Could you play a deck with a ton of Dust Imps and just get a little more Ember out of them? But yeah, it didn't rise to the level of, that seems better than all these other ideas we have. So it didn't end up getting used.
And what's interesting, so Ragwar being Brobnar artifact, amber printed item after a creature reaps. If it is the first time a creature has reaped this turn, deal 2 damage to it. I love Pingle Huanoi's touch it. I dare you. But even looking here on DOK, the win percentage for this card is very low, 45 and 0.7% win rate. So yeah, if we're looking to min max the decks that we're bringing, it just gets benched. I mean, that's why we saw it benched. All right, should we go into decks that saw at least one play?
Yeah.
Go for it.
For artifacts. So we had 2 artifacts with exactly 1 usage. We had Mechabui, which won. The Mechabui won.
Which destroyed me in ways I don't want to talk about.
Let's talk about it. So yeah, tell us about how this went with this Mechabui.
So I played against Nifty. One of the younger players. He did come to live, and he did very, very well at live. And obviously he played a DT deck with Mechabui. And as we've talked about, cards like Mechabui are very good when you play against somebody who doesn't have DT, and you have tide raising effects, because you're just getting free amber, essentially. Or I'm taking chains to prevent you from getting 1 amber, which is terrible. And and then I played Universal Keylock in my deck, and I don't know, I floundered. I probably made a play mistake. Because I tried to play the Martian Generosity Key Abduction with Keylock, so you draw just a ton of cards, and then my deck also had a Might Mate's Right and that. Just the way my draw went, I had to Martian Gen very early, and I had it set up where my intent was to get it back into my archives, but I had no way, and I just never recovered. So much amber so quick, it didn't even matter that he was paying amber in some way, because he didn't win that quickly. Like Mechabui basically canceled out my Keylock. Turns he just
So I'll put it in. Mechabui is a Logos artifact with an amber on it. Item, at the start of each player's turn, if the tide is high for that player, they gain 1 amber. So it is helping for you to be able to gain amber just by having the tide. Looking at Nifty's deck, so this happens to be AQ Storm the Mighty. This is an 81 SAS DT deck. So you're looking at, some things that jumped out at me. You have 10 for its creature control. A lot of little ping damage versus the big straight board wipe that I saw. 17 printed amber. That's very, very high. And you were talking about the tide. Well, there's 5 different cards that manipulate the tide, and there's a total of 9 that will use the tide. So if you're chaining yourself in order to be able to keep that, in order to be able to make sure that he's not just gaining amber, that can be a real issue. 21 creatures, which is odd. DT usually doesn't have that many creatures. So those are some stats that jumped out. I will tell you 8 and a 10th for amber control and 29 expected amber. So it has shadows, unfathomable, and untamed. So it's looking at a double fuzzy Gruen, a Deepwater Gruen, Chelonia. So you're looking at some Mollyhawk in order to have artifact control. If there's other artifacts that they're playing with, Witch of the Dawn to return. And then you have a bit of control there with the double brain drain bubbles. It's an interesting deck here, to be honest. So,
yeah, I think with the Mecha Buoy, the expected ember is well over 30.
Yep.
Right? And I think that's why
You go with
probably
it.
one of the main reasons why I struggled with all that ways to get the tide and stuff. So, yep, pretty nice.
What was your, because you were playing your Jenka sheep, so you are looking at what's your creature control in that?
Oh, it's
Okay, straight board. Because I mean, there's 21 creatures here too. That
okay anyway.
okay.
I was
Well,
playing
even
Master a big deck.
yeah.
13 creature control there. Does have a Coward's End for board clear.
But I mean, even little cards like Cop, where your opponent cannot play more than one card of each type, that has an impact. How does, doesn't Big Fire struggle with being able to go ahead and deal with straight Amber Rush, big push?
I mean, it's a Grump Buggy deck.
So it has some.
So if I can land my Grump Buggy and there was Elock, the theory, I can beat Rush, but
yeah, I mean,
I lost 3 keys to Amber.
Oh,
Yeah.
Well, but looking at the effective power that Nifty was throwing out, I mean, you have Tanawa, you have the double Seabringer Kakoa, so you have some larger creatures, even the double Fuzzy Gruens. You have Mollyhawk. He's got the double Bumblebirds, which I would normally argue not doing anything, but there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7.
They're bad. Don't
They
even
are
try.
bad.
They suck.
But you have 8 other creatures outside of the 2 of them. Usually it's a complete waste of a turn, but you have.
They still did absolutely nothing.
Yeah,
they're
but you have
fungal birds, and
it's a dead card that just needs to be
right
burned.
up there with bad pennies for cards that you in a deck.
Yeah. But I mean, Deepwater Gruen. So he's got a lot of these 5 power creatures that I'm seeing in both Unfathomable and Untamed that are going to play against Grump Buggy.
Doesn't care because intent is the might makes right.
I understand that, but it also
it did not work. It did not matter. I never even got close to trying anything. I just lost real bad.
Did you see the might makes right, or is it just buried at the bottom?
It didn't matter. Like, absolutely dominated me the whole game. I never did anything useful. I let him play some cards and win, and then I went and cried in a corner.
Oh,
all right.
Well, all right. Well, let's talk about the next artifact, so she can come out of the corner. So, also with 1 play was Hydro Cataloger, which is similar in some ways to Mecha Buoy, archiving a card when you raise the tide.
Did that win?
It did not win.
No,
No.
This is a card that I don't any way that you can make Hydro Cataloger significantly better for one player than the other.
Mm-hmm.
Because Hydro Cataloger only works if the tide is changing, right? You get to archive a card. It says archive a card whenever you raise the tide.
Right.
Right? So it only does anything if the tide is getting raised. And for the tide to get raised, that means the opponent is raising the tide at some point. They're archiving a card as well. And this is not sealed or
DT.
something where they have a bunch of random trash cards. They're in a deck with good cards, so giving them more is not beneficial. you, right? Like I don't see how this card works outside of some niche situations where you're trying to build a giant hand for some Logos key cheats, right? There is some dream there where you think you're going to get some key cheatiness off, but again, like you got to trust they're not going to be fast enough just to beat up your combo, which lets me tell you, there's no guarantee you get to play your combo. And
This format is wonky when it comes to accelerating into combos. So
right, which it's going to be similar when we get to Howling Pit later on, and that was probably
that had a lot more uses.
Yeah, so Hydra Cataloger, Logos Artifact, 1 Amber. After item, after a player raises the tide, they archive the top card of their deck. What was interesting was there was an argument put out from someone, even in RAC, with being able to combine it with Tide Warp. So another Logos Artifact, Tide Warp, printed Amber, power. At the start of your turn, if the tide is high, your opponent raises the tide. Otherwise, you raise the tide.
Right. So this is exactly what I'm saying. Like, those are both effects. So my opponent raises the tide, he archives a card from the top of his deck. And then I can raise the tide, and now I get to archive a card for me. So, like, there's only one card that I know of, and that's that one Sanctum card that resets the tide, and it can't be changed until the beginning of your turn.
Yeah.
There's some Sanctum card that does this. And this is the only card that I can think of that lets me benefit from this card more than you, and that sure isn't in a meaningful way.
Isn't that the River's Dry? I'm trying to think of.
Yeah, Dry the River. Yeah.
Dry the River. Okay.
Yeah, right. So, like, I there is some silly combo that's kind of neat there. I get to archive one more card than you.
It's not Dry the River.
I can tell you that Joker
Dry the
was
River
talking.
is the one that prevents.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Trial by Water.
Trial by Water. Okay, there you go. Yes, Trial by Water. I know Joker was talking about, he had run a nice little deck that had the ability to run with that piece of Tide Warp and Hydra Cataloger. And so it was being looked at when we were, playing around, checking out decks. Did not make the cut from what was there. But that was the premise. And obviously someone else made a decision to go with it. But I agree with you. I think that if it helps your opponent, and there's just not enough to be able to raise it back, that
like I said, I would try that in Sealed, where I'm hoping the quality of my deck is better than the quality of your deck anyways, so I'm getting more out of my archiving, but not in Archon.
Mm-hmm.
Which this is an Archon variant. So I know you're bringing a deck with good cards, so I don't want to give you more access to your cards.
All right, well, let's go on to the next couple decks that ended up with 2. There was a whole bunch of artifacts that had 2.
Whole bunch. So we got Widespread Corruption, 2 uses, 1 win.
And that's a Shadows artifact, because I had pulled that up. I had actually looked at this. This was one that I had spent quite a bit of time on. Artifact, printed Amber. After a player gains Amber by reaping, a creature they do not control captures that Amber. I couldn't find a way to be able to take advantage of it enough compared to others. That's what the end result was.
This is another Curiosaurus Ludo kind of thing. Like, I could spend some time and see where I think you anytime they reach, kind of making possibly.
But what I was looking at is that we have Curia, fine. We can see that. There's other options of just having Curia that's out right away. But there's other better options, in my opinion. What I saw this was big board decks are really looking, their win con is to get their board out and then to reap. And this is not going to allow that in the easy format that it is, because you end up capturing.
This is another card where we get back to, like, if your opponent doesn't reap, this card is terrible.
Correct. So if you end up facing Coda, or, and it's just Coda with printed Amber, sorry, GG, it's over. And some of these, when I was trying them out, that's what I came to the conclusion. I'm like, man, some of these are much better. And I think that's why we saw some players, or a large portion of ABR, playing specific artifacts.
Yeah, this is another one that is predicates on what your opponent is doing, as it does nothing useful. So I can see where this is.
Yeah.
You can make a broken kind of thing going on with this, but it's still dependent on your opponent. Makes it not as good.
Another
now the
two.
winning one was so SD Russell brought a double brig deck. It actually has 3 binate ruptures, 2 graphs, as well as a neutron shark. So I think that his strategy was probably something like, "Hey, I'm going to try to build up, give it all back to my opponent, and then just get a crazy brig out of it."
Yep. Brig is an interesting combo in every format because there are some decks that just don't have Scaling Amber, and if you call them at the right time, you just get to hurt on them.
We'll actually take it a step further. I had originally changed just for a solid deck that I really enjoy. It's my AOA. It's Insightful Infiltrator. 80 SAS deck. It's the double charrette, my Artanu. It's got 2 binate ruptures and an IG and neutron shark. And I was looking at just as solid all around, but I ended up playing a different deck based on I honestly, I didn't really care which artifact to throw in with this, and it didn't make it exponentially better. And so there were other decks that were a better choice. So that's interesting to see Brig being used. I'm glad someone else thought of it and kind of can push. On a similar thought, the next deck above that was Shattered Throne. Also going 2-1. So I give all these people who are winning with this is awesome. But Shattered Throne, Brobnar, artifact, 1 amber. After a creature is used to fight, it captures 1 location. So in my opinion, this is very, very similar to what we just saw.
So
It's just it's fighting and you're capturing 1.
So Shattered Throne is a card that we know exists, is good and sealed, and then
bad in Archon.
Can get less good in Archon because you there is a way to defeat Shattered Throne. It's the same way you defeat Eye of Judgment, Eye of captures 1.
You're saying Font of the Eye.
Font of the Eye. Defeat both of those cards with Umbras and stuff. You defeat those cards by just not playing.
Mm-hmm.
No fights happen, sir. None of your effects exist now. Aha. Not every deck is capable of playing that way, but some decks are capable of playing that way. And again, you've just like that, depending on your opponent's deck, may not do.
Now, what's interesting here, actually, the one win was Jupiter with one of his favorite decks, the eventually obtuse Inca.
Yeah, he loves Inca.
Double Nature's Call. Burstiness there, control the weak, arise, right? So,
and I will tell you, Jupiter being part of the team was like, I don't really care what artifact I get. So that's the other piece is, some people just know these decks so well, and they took an artifact, but it didn't really have a huge impact on their deck. That was the case for Jupiter. It really was. He's like, I love this deck. I'll play it. But this, in my opinion, didn't drastically help. It did impact a little bit on his choice of why, because he was minimizing one of the pieces he struggled with, a little bit on the amber control. But
has Robner with
Yep.
So I mean, it again, it's not a bad choice by any means, but it can be.
My favorite card that Wookie loves, but we were really sad we couldn't play, Pester Grove, Untamed, artifact, amber, location. Each creature enters play enraged.
2-1. So 2 uses, 1 win.
I'm still impressed.
This one, right, again, it feels like the same kind of thing where, if your opponent isn't playing creatures, who cares about it? But if you're not playing creatures and they are playing something, you have to play creatures for this good, because, right, it enrages them, and if you're not playing creatures, then who cares? So what? It's Pester Grove, and I play some sort of reoccurring cadet, whatever his name, you remember, or I play a bunch of Brabbles with Pester Grove, so you have to fight into stuff that's terrible?
Maybe, the winning deck just basically had 19 pips, and was a, Coda, Dust Pixie, Chota, full moon situation. So it's just big Coda Rush, and don't let your opponent reap.
That is interesting. The deck that I was looking at from Pester Grove when I had thrown it up was MM with 21 printed amber, and honestly, just killing, putting amber, like just going ahead and destroying creatures. So I'm going to go ahead and put amber on your creatures. I'm going to kill it, and I'm not going to be playing creatures. So,
Yep.
All right, going up above that, we have some winners now with our 2-0, and that was both Gambling Den, Evasion Sigil.
No wins for either of these.
Nope. 2 uses, no wins.
Yep.
Gambling Den's interesting because I feel like that is a card you can play a deck that should be able to hit.
Yeah, it feels like potentially
Alliance
you
ever.
You could, right?
Maybe. But the deck still has to do something else. If all it does is let you know what your top card is, and then you're not drawing or playing it, that isn't necessarily good either.
Yeah,
I don't know about that one.
That.
And then that's kind of the same thing when we get back to Invasion Sigil. This is a card that, if your opponent doesn't have to fight, this card doesn't really do anything. Right now, an Invasion Sigil... No, yeah. I just don't see, because it discards the top card of your deck. So, I don't see any way that you get to abuse that information in an effective way. Not a fan of this. It's again, if your opponent doesn't have to fight, which apparently the people you probably played opponents have to fight. Now, that means you're probably playing a creature-based Reap deck, and all they got to do is bring enough action-based C, it doesn't necessarily matter. It's real matchup dependent. It smooths out. These cards can smooth out a couple of holes, but I don't know. Not seeing it, and obviously.
Yeah, I don't think we even really seriously considered this when we were chatting on the team. So
it's interesting because I looked at both of the decks for Gambling Den, and you have Joe who went ahead. Or what is it? XO73D. That's
there's a way to pronounce that.
Yeah, and I apologize.
Talks backwards.
Okay.
Yeah. But 85 SAS, you're looking a lot of speed here with this Worlds Collide deck, and I don't know. I mean, you have some options with Ali that can go ahead and see, and so maybe that's what you're looking for. But I don't know. I guess I'm not.
The card is named Gambling Den, though. So even if you have cards that let you know, that doesn't mean your opponent doesn't just guess and get all the amber and win anyways.
Yep.
Right? Because it is Gambling Den. There's this possibility that his opponent just went I don't know, Untamed. Oh, yeah, it is. Dust Pixie. I only need 2 now. Ha ha ha. Show to win.
Well, and so this was the other piece of feedback that I gave. So if you haven't filled out your feedback for ABR and you're part of the league, provide some feedback. I think that's helpful. But I said that for me, I would have liked to actually have seen the artifacts kind of match up so that there's only 12 to choose from. And everyone, when I pick, whoever's on the opposite team who picks the same, that's the artifact that we're playing. Because what ended up happening is there's 2 different artifacts that were brought in right from the start. 2 copies
of that artifact in play? Or
no, just one. Just one.
Okay, that is interesting. I do kind of like the thought of that, except at the same time, it's a thought exercise I'm not going to be willing to spend any time on. So if we want to do that, we need to do it for the podcast, because right now is my dedicated Keyforge thinking time. I'm all for thinking about this stuff right now, but during the rest of the week, I don't have time.
Yeah, and that was Joe.
Okay, actually, but we do gotta grind on, otherwise we're gonna record for 5 hours. Annihilation Ritual is an interesting one because it had 2 plays and 2 wins. Annihilation Ritual is the one that when it gets purged.
That's right. We talked about this one a lot, actually. We didn't end up playing Annihilation Ritual, but I think we seriously considered it a few times. Now,
Annihilation Ritual, Dis Artifact, Printed Amber Power. When a creature would enter a discard pile from play, it is purged instead. And if I saw it correctly, one of those two was played by our own Z. So,
Well, it was Z's deck. So Brobnar 89 played Z's deck, a 4 quad routine job TMTP
correct.
deck. Z Colton. So
yeah, like that.
Yeah.
That deck. Get rid of its stupid creatures so it can just cycle the stuff it wants.
Routine
Heck
job.
Yeah.
It's got a howling pit in it, right? Like it just wants to get back to the routine jobs. The library access, double mother.
And that's why that deck had jumped out. I'm like, oh man, okay.
Yeah, C. Colton. Yeah, I played that deck in one of the
KFPLs, yeah.
Yes, I played that in a KFPL season. My Archon decks. Very mean. And yes, if you could get out from the crappy creatures that are in the deck, life is much.
Yeah, and you are right. It was Brobnar 89 who had gone ahead and piloted that. And then Mark H went ahead and piloted the other Annihilation, and that was C. Colton. Right, that's what you're talking about.
That's one we're talking
That's Colton,
about.
yeah. And then
played some.
Yeah.
But yeah, that is definitely like Annihilation Ritual. If you know you don't want your creatures and your opponent might possibly want their creatures, like that's a card that I can definitely see. You think it can be more advantageous to you than if cycle better. Like I could see some control. But then what's the next one? Bert device though. Bert.
Bert.
Which went 3. There were 3 uses, 2 wins.
This is the artifact that doesn't let you play house twice.
So we thought about this a little bit, just as a counter to something we're talking a little bit later, which we'll bring up. But we didn't necessarily see a great use for it as sort of just vanilla without being a counter.
Yeah.
Like this is a card that I see can be strong against some MM decks and very strong against a bunch of Wise deck where they make them move around. And although some artifacts were banned, that doesn't mean they were banned listing in the deck anyway. Right device with some other stuff could that plus has a goofy action that and the eggs mirror got 2 pants.
Cannot.
Right?
Yes.
Yeah, well, that just gets real crazy.
I don't know. That's that card is definitely interesting. It is Bernie, but you definitely want to be playing. You got to be playing a deck that does not care about calling this. Got to be a fairly high efficient deck that just is hand.
Right.
And like it's just a strong counter if somebody else wants to play a deck that doesn't play from hand, because that is a thing that happens with Coda when they play from hand. They don't have enough seed. Decks that can just control board and just like every turn mess with you.
Star Alliance to return, yeah.
Yeah, and that prevents that, right? You have to change houses. You can't just be in your control loop is definitely things people were thinking about with some other cards that see where this was interesting choice.
Next one was Pincerator. Pincerator had 3 uses, and it had 1 win. Now, when we were talking about Pincerator, we were digging through our decks looking for just how many Brabbles can we bring, and how many like Rad Pennies or Cumex can we bring in order to just keep killing these things. Brabble's particularly interesting, right? Because the
friend of the show, Lokar, taught me all about Pincerator double Brabble on Monday night when we person.
Ah.
Correct me.
Yeah, it's so basically Pincerator deals at the end of each player's turn, right? Will deal 1 damage to each flank creature. Brabble's a 2-power creature, so if you play it on your flank, it's going to die at the end of your opponent's turn. And when Brabble's destroyed, if it's your opponent's turn, they lose 3 Ember. So that's at the end of their turn. So it makes it hard for them to make Ember if you can just keep playing Brabbles, which is pretty nice.
And his deck had a Grim Reminder, so again.
Nice.
So here's the question I had. Did you guys end up in your final decision going with a better deck? We'll call it just SAS for ease. Like, oh, this is a higher rated SAS deck, more efficient, better choice. Or did you go with, I think I can abuse this artifact that's going to be constant with a lower SAS deck?
Well, I brought a
was
67.
Lazy and played a good deck and tried to pick an artifact that should make it better. That didn't work.
All right, Draz?
I brought a 67
Okay.
and did not win, but probably could have won had I realized a key point, which we'll get to in a moment. We'll get to in a moment when we get to our artifact.
Okay, because for me, I was originally going 80, and I saw lots of 80 pluses. I mean, 80, 85 is all up and down on the sheet. Mine, I ended up going with a 76. I did pull the win, so we kind of have the down and out, a twist of tails for Draz, and then I was victorious. So that's interesting to see kind of the difference. Originally, I was just going with the general deck, and I didn't think it mattered enough, so I actually dropped in kind of specified or focused on a deck that I could abuse the artifact that I was bringing in. And it's just an interesting thought process as we're going through. So the next one that we had then here was the big one.
Big one was a big winner, too.
Yeah.
4 uses, 3 wins. And, right, this is the Brobnar artifact in Worlds Collide that nobody wants to play, but big one is fun, right? So every time, basically, you put a counter every time you play a creature. Once the 10th creature is played, blow up the whole board, blow up everything, right?
Including artifacts, right? It kills
Yes.
artifacts and
Yeah, destroy each creature and artifact.
which that whole destroying your opponent's artifacts can be just absolutely and it's kind of fun because if you pick the big ones, take one big, the other big one, and
Yep. Yeah, the winners brought Untamed Burst. They brought Rad Pennies. They right, if you just burst, and then you blow up the whole board after you play all your dust pixies and reset things. That can help you quite a bit.
yeah, that one makes sense to me, right? I mean, there is the chance that they're even decks that often don't count on creatures will have very artifacts, and this back on them. And the big one is quite devastating to keep anything up. If you're just playing a push creature, don't care about them being in a deck.
I have many high SAS decks, frankly, that don't have big, strong C. So to have a board clear, let alone a board clear with artifact control, oh, yes, please. That is exactly what I need. So I can see that doing well, and that doesn't shock me at all. The next one, though, did shock me a little bit. Autocannon.
4 uses, 3 wins. Now, what shocked you about it?
That it's played. So autocannon, Brother Artifacts, Amber. Deal 1 to each creature. Deal 1 to each creature after it enters play. I could see it being used with Rad Penny to be able to return it. I could go ahead and see that it's Cleansing Wave, has an impact there. And if you're going to be running like a larger power with your creatures, then okay, you don't really have to care about it. Or if you're running Sanctum and you have armor, then you don't have to care about it. But I don't know. It's not an artifact that I think of or think about when I'm thinking Archon. Here's autocannon.
So you had mentioned earlier Rogwarg and the potential of Dust Imps, and my brain went, that's not broken enough. And there is a deck that already has an autocannon in it, and 4 dust imps and an arise. So
But
you get both
you're
your
talking.
auto cannons out,
Yeah.
and then every time you play a dust imp, it dies and gives you.
But here's the problem. You have to get to that second autocannon
Oh, sure,
in that
it had
scenario.
logos. It's gonna happen. It's
Yeah,
fun
but
to think about. I didn't mean like it's fun to think about. It doesn't mean it.
Mm.
I'm just I mean, for me, I was looking at I want my effect right away. I don't want it to be buried in the bottom 3 cards and I never see it. And that's why I ended up deciding on the deck that I played in the end versus just going ahead and saying, hey, this is good and it can be great if I get the other card. I don't know. That's just my thought process on it.
I was personally surprised it wasn't used more. I thought
Really?
with there's just so many commons that take great advantage of just spreading damage, right? Cleansing waves, Darnas, Mars needs Ember. I when we were talking through things, we thought autocannon was maybe one of the stronger artifacts. And small sample size, but 75% win rate.
Yeah, and that's much higher than most of the other artifacts that you saw. I mean, you saw one at 100%, 2 of them are at 75, and we'll see one eventually that will make it to 77. So, yeah, no, it had a great win percentage.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Okay, so then we got one of my favorite cards, which is the Grunt Buggy. 6 plays, 3 wins. This is one it says for each creature you have that's 5 or higher power, you're 1. Makes real high key costs. I mean, like, this one, it's definitely easier for you to pick a deck that you think is going to be advantaged with big creatures. But Grunt Buggy decks often live and die even if they have Grunt Buggies, and that you build your board and then I wipe it.
Mm-hmm.
And enough of that kind of stuff exists that Grunt Buggy decks definitely. I never seriously considered this as a card for because a board wipe, and then even if you only something like they can just overcome the attacks.
Right, yeah. Somebody did bring a double Grump Buggy deck, making it a triple Grump Buggy deck, but it lost.
Who pulled the quad Grunt Buggy deck sheep when we were down in Indy? Oh, no. I'm total. Okay, I'll have to remember. They rode down in the car with us. Anyway.
Did they get to sleep in the car as well?
No.
Apparently that's a thing, right?
But we did. But we did go over. We did take a side trip over to Michigan because Ewok was not paying attention, and then
drove to Michigan.
Yeah, and that's a problem because then you miss the toll that we need to go down and go around.
That was Ben.
It's Ben. It was Ben. Yes,
Ben
he pulled a quad. But picture that, a quad Grunt Buggy. This could have made it a 5. Yes. Pent.
So then his 3 creatures or something that were in that deck that would trigger it could.
Boom. You just kill it and then
there are 3 decks in this world.
Not a lot.
Shout out to Ben. I'm a miss you, bud.
And all right, Ben's is a 65.
Yeah, it's not good.
And it's got triple plague rats. And it's got an effective power of
not great.
I'll trigger it.
Yeah. Not great. And it's 4 cards that are there. All right. The next one going up, you may have heard of this one before. Curiosaurus had 7 uses, and it came out with 4 wins.
Huh?
Well, 50. Again, Curiosaurus does have that little bit of requirement that your opponent plays. This is one where I have seen some people lose and make mistakes against Curiosaurus, where they have played a creature that wasn't good when they didn't need it.
Yeah.
And then the opponent goes and Curiosaurus dumps all the amber onto that creature, right? They play something, a Shadow's 3-power creature who's just not going to do anything in the game. You know, they're just playing cards, and creatures, when you have them, the Curious, sometimes you just beat it, because has creatures, right? Onto their creatures. But is
So-
a defeatable card potentially, but it is damn good because they're going to be playing.
One of the decks I was looking at for KFPL Season 2 when we had to try it, when I was there, was a triple Curia deck. And I will tell you, that is a brain-burning deck when you have to think about, and I cannot imagine sitting in a full tournament for 6 rounds to be able to go through and play triple Curia. Like, it messes with people because they lose focus. They're a little bit off in the idea for 3 Amber versus even 1 or 2. It messes with people, but I couldn't do it. You can go ahead and end up wiping, and there's nothing that's going to be done with that Amber. So there are ways around it. Drez, you did note that none of the winners, what did they have?
Well, okay, so none of the winners had Neutron Shark. Now, why would I point this out? So there is an interesting play here with Curia because, right, when you play a Neutron Shark, it allows you to destroy a creature artifact on both sides of the field, right?
Mm-hmm.
So you've got actually you've got a sort of an extra kill on your side, plus the ability to temporarily remove the Curia, right? So if you play your Neutron Shark, destroy your Curia and destroy an opponent's creature, and start killing all your opponent's stuff, collect all that Ember, and then once the effect is done, the Curia comes back out. So, and this word of this had sort of gotten out. I think I can't remember if it was before. I feel like it was maybe after decks were selected. Maybe it was before. I think it was after decks had been selected. But none of those silly combos actually ended up winning, and I thought it might.
Counting on that Neutron Shark to actually freaking work and not just flip a Logos card and crap it in the dark bed.
It's true. So maybe that's what happened, right? Winners tended to have Amphora, a lot of Amphoras in the
because that's
winners.
really good.
Yeah, and a lot of Sanctum, right? Which makes sense as well.
Capture. I wonder. I don't know if you looked at the Sanctum, but did they have Equalize? I've got some style decks with Equalize,
right?
Because Amber gets spread out all over the place, and then you go pick it all in one. Smash it.
Yeah, it's a really good question. I didn't explicitly look for that one, but that's a really good one to look for.
But yeah, I can see Curia is definitely, it is one of the artifacts that can be better one player than the other. Although I think Curia has a skill gap, but I also think in general the people playing in the ABR, you can't count on your skill level being that much better than them to count on them making Curia.
No Equalize, actually, on the winners.
Right. So then the next one is exactly the results I was expecting, and this is the Howling Pit, which had 8 players and only 3 winners. And this is straight up, kind of, we talked about this, or how Howling Pit can just be a discard card sometimes, and that's because, yes, you're getting an extra card, but so is your opponent. They are already playing a deck that they think has a good chance to win with the broken artifact they've picked, and now you're just giving them access to 1 card. Right? So, they're already playing a deck that they think is going to beat anything that's coming at them, and now you're just giving them more efficiency for particularly combo deck. Tries to combo early. But whatever they're doing effectively. That's the problem with Howling Pit. Just makes their deck better too. And again, in Archon, they want their cards. This is a guild where it's like, oh boy, I have another Tandlin or another pointless whatever card that I just don't care about. They have cards they want, and you're faster. I think the Howling Pit, it doesn't do it for me.
That was what I discovered through my playtesting, because I originally had put Howling Pit with the Infiltrator, just already a huge speed, and I'm like, I'm just going to increase it. But the problem was my opponents, when I was practicing on my team, it just went ahead and ended up causing them to get to their combo faster, to their cards that they needed. And it actually was a reverse effect of what I needed, because my deck is already fast. It didn't speed it up enough to be able to make up for what they were gaining. The other piece on the last one, I was searching frantically. I was looking for Obsidian Forge and Curia. And I think that has a really nice interaction. So just wanted to throw that out. If you're not aware, definitely think about Curia.
The Amber doesn't come in after you kill the creature.
Mm-hmm.
Then the Amber moves. Sacrifice. That just moves Amber onto their creature. Kill their.
You'll need a wipe, but having the wipe at that time is exactly what you want.
But if you have a wipe, then all your creatures are dead, and now you get to use. I don't think it works the way you think it does.
Okay.
But anyways.
So outside of that, coming in at 9 uses and 7 wins is Whirlpool, and it had a pretty high win rate. Yeah.
Oh yeah, 77%. Whirlpool was where it was at. Now, there was a ton of ways to go ahead and abuse this, right? Think about lots of capture. There was a lot of Antony decks out there. I saw a lot of Charrettes, Amphoras. Lieutenant Governor was very popular. Commandeer was very popular. Our team brought a double Pit Lord Gromid deck to play, and we mentioned before about silly locks.
That just feels more like trolling than anything else.
Yeah. I mean, it was the deck. I should check what the SAS was. It was like a 57 SAS, but we first turn won.
That seems like a John Palm thing.
Yeah. Oh, that was John's. That was John's deck. John didn't play it, but yeah, it was John's deck, and the opponent did not bring Dis, and first turn, Desyog played down Pit Lord, and then ended his turn and chatted his opponent. He's like, "Hey, so you just lost because
So he gets Pit Lord. He reaps with Pit Lord.
Sure.
He ends turn. He passes Pit Lord back.
Yeah, so I reap. I end turn. I pass back. I got 2 Ember for playing Pit Lord.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay. So you're right. So, because I got that 2 Amber for the play.
Yes.
I am now going to forge these first.
Yep.
Oh my God.
So
like that right there is exactly like the kind of broken thinking that does make me just want to reach across and strangle you, even playing that.
I will tell you that both our team and then we played Belcano Busters, so Dave C's team, we both agreed ahead of time that we were not going to play Pit Lord. That was it was seen ahead of time by both teams, and we're just not doing that. And I appreciate that decision was made. There was kind of a mutual agreement. And for anyone who had seen or heard the Help from Future Self episode, they were kind of hinting at, this unknown piece. That was what they had. That's basically what they were looking at. Was Pit Lord with Whirlpool? It's done. It's done, and it's over and over. Yeah, well, we made an agreement, and I'm fine with that if both teams have a truce.
Yeah, that is just awful as you think about it. But if your opponent has Dis, it's not a guaranteed win.
We actually, we put in our spreadsheet, we put a column with next to every deck that was, what did this deck have Dis or not? And if you put no, it was like play at your own risk, because we assumed, because we were, so I did go to the captain's channel, and I was like, hey, we found something that's like, seems pretty broken. Like, should we not do
it? It seems. Yeah, it's broken.
I mean, you're not guaranteed to get the Pit Lord on the first turn, but if you have 2 of them, it gets a lot easier.
And you're mulliganing for that. Here's your hard mulligan for it.
So actually, did not see as many Mark of Dis as I expected, and I thought really we'd see a lot of that to lock folks. Now, I played Whirlpool. I thought about bringing a Pit Lord deck, but I did not. I actually brought a triple Drumble, double Gatekeeper, triple Fear deck. My whole game plan is to go in, drop the Drumble, pass it to my opponent, fear the Drumble back to my hand, get all the Ember, keep doing this, right? And I had some Sanctum 2 to capture some Ember to make sure they couldn't just
7 amber.
sit at 6. Yeah, so I had some Sanctum to so in theory it could be a little hard, but you're playing against a lot of decks with a lot of bursts in this scenario. So there was lots of ways to get our opponent to crazy amounts. Now, unlucky for me, my opponent brought a double Drumble deck. So we were passing back and forth Drumbles. At one point, there was 42 Ember on this Drumble. It was flying around. Now, I mentioned I lost. So the reason I lost the game is because there were multiple Drumbles. And maybe he would have won anyway, but the losing play, there's multiple Drumbles flying around the board, rotating around. Drumble passes to my opponent. I feared the Drumble and got 42 Ember or something. And looked at my hand. I'm like, where's the Drumble? It was his Drumble, not mine. So he got an extra Drumble instead of me. That put me out of position, and I couldn't recover, and I lost to Dilly. So Dilly, well played, sir.
Good team.
Yeah.
I was going to go ahead and say your numbers are off here, man. I'm just going to say this because I played against Whirlpool, and when I went up here, it has a little W next to Icebox. So shout out to Icebox. It was a great game, but this is not a win for Icebox with Whirlpool. My Universal Keylock, which we're going to talk about, actually ended up taking that win.
Did your captain enter it correctly?
I'm not going to go ahead and say, but
I mean, updating it right here.
Why we're in
help.
the second from the bottom? No, I'm joking. We had a good team, but
okay.
Yeah, I know I won. I know it was reported that way. I thought it was a very interesting game. So Icebox brought an 80 SAS MM deck, and man, 14 printed Amber. It's got 23 Amber control, 25 expected, 12 creature. This was double Pincerator, safe place, safe house, bow, double Rad Penny, yet City State Interest, spoils. I mean, the amount of Amber that was here for that Whirlpool. Oh, and then the double Lieutenant Gorvenal, Book of Malefication, which I am so thankful. I would have gotten destroyed. This was in the bottom 3 cards. And so that's what I ended up facing. And this was one of the most thinky games I've seen in a very long time.
Did you
Centurion
60 minutes?
No. But no. But no. Actually, we were both thinking through, and I felt very good about that. But it did take longer than the 45. But it just barely went over that. But Curia is also in there, and there's just so much happening in that deck. So it's an interesting way to be able to see how Whirlpool can drastically change a game that was there.
Yeah, that was Whirlpool was the big winner of the night.
So I got to say, it doesn't go ahead and actually get the win percentage. It's going to get slopped down.
Don't let them think I actually screwed up all the numbers and none of this is invalid. Don't even put that thought into their mind.
It's a 67%. I just changed it. We're done.
All right, keep going.
All right, let's go on. Speed Sigil is the next artifact, and that was played 11 times, and it pulled 6 wins. We all know what Speed Sigil is. Do we need to run through it? We're good. Let's move on.
We assume everybody remembers a set from 52 years ago.
Oh my goodness! All right,
I'm giving you grief. I think we're fine on Speed.
First
Speed
creature
Sigil
played comes in ready.
Is another card that, it's hard to guarantee you're getting the advantage of. And definitely think you're bringing the deck that gets the advantage, but you are actually. And that's the problem with Speed Sigil. And as we have talked about, Speed Sigil has become a card that is playable. Because modern base decks are just that extra Toda comparison.
Yeah, I think
Sigil on these decks is cool, but still, you're counting on your opponent not making better.
I think Star Alliance Worlds Collide is brutal to be able to see, and that's not what you necessarily had. We had also looked at some of the new DT. with what Spade Sigil could do, played up
Yeah,
there. But
Sings stuff.
yeah. But you actually, in one of those was, we saw Sins. If you're not familiar, winning decks had Sins and Essence Scale. What were some of the other pieces that you...
Yeah, well, I mean, so we played that out of our team too. Like, and that's just, if you can get the Essence Scale out, then you can just take all your opponent's Ember out of hand,
Put it in yours.
right? Because you can play Envy and Greed. Wait, Envy and Greed, Gluttony.
It should be Gluttony.
Whatever.
Envy and
It's
Gluttony. Out of hand and take all your opponent's Ember. So that worked well for us. It looked like it worked well for another team.
That was us.
So, but yeah, it's hard, right? There was one Sutterkins deck that won and another that lost, right? Just a bunch of Sutterkins and a whole bunch of Logos creatures. So,
all right, then we had some big players, but man, they did not perform very well. Next was Universal Keylock. It says 13 uses, 6 wins. I got to go and update mine, but Universal Keylock
in here.
Yeah, so maybe it just got doubled up. But Universal Keylock, increasing the key cost +3 for each person. And you put all but one winning deck had high E. Lots of TMTP and Doorstep. But the losing decks had a lot of TMP and Cutthroat Research and the like as well. So Martian Generosity, Brig didn't seem to work that great. Dan. Though there was one winning Jenka deck. Our team ended up going with Universal Keylock. Joker played a triple TMTP deck. He
Not get the win, as I
He did not. He was very, very, very sad about this. He talked about being high rolled. And it sounded like he had a very, very good, strong deck that he faced, but also a strong player too. That was one of the 2 7-0 players. And sometimes, if they just draw well, they're throwing out multiple cards. They know the deck, and getting the cards definitely helps. I can talk a little bit about my deck. My deck was Icadus, the vendor of powder, 76 SAS deck that comes to us from Coda, and 10 Amber Control, 30 expected, 14 printed. It had double TMTP, Fagin with double Archon, bait and switch, pawn sacrifice, reverse time, Mother. There's a whole bunch of things. But what actually ended up helping me in the matchup against Underground with that Whirlpool, all Curia, and all the bouncing around, ironically, I had pulled it for some of the speed and amber generation, but it has double Cleansing Wave. And double Cleansing Wave with the damage that was out there from Pincerator, that was the big difference. I could go ahead, and I also had Gatekeeper, so I could grab a whole bunch, then send it off. But Cleansing Wave it actually played better than the TMTP. I was just able to gain Amber and not do much about it, that he couldn't stop me. So.
Okay, and then we have the Loser artifact.
Yeah.
most used. Mm-hmm.
And one of the lowest win.
Soul Snatcher.
Yeah. 14 uses. So at 8 teams. So at most, an artifact can be used 16 times. So almost every team used Soul Snatcher twice. And there was only 5 wins out of it.
So you got some notes on here. You said the winning decks had 7 creatures, full creature, kept spamming creatures. Is it because decks that were beating them just brought scaling Amber Control? Didn't all the Amber you want because I'm
potentially. I didn't look at all the matchups, but definitely like Soul Snatcher it's double-sided, right? If you're not bringing scaling Amber Control yourself, then
they may just go ahead and win.
Yeah, yeah. Like you might be getting a ton, but they're also getting a ton.
Yeah, right? that is the problem with Soul Snatcher, right? Like anybody who has creatures, and if they're playing a deck that doesn't care about, they're like happy Snatcher. Hey, all my creatures that weren't very good are now an extra Amber.
Yeah, the ones I was never going to be able to reap with.
I thought if I'm playing a deck with all mothers and mothers, daughters, like creatures that have good effects, and or good reap effects, that kind of stuff, statics, and now you're going to kill them anyways, and now I get an amber when you.
I thought the comment at the end, you're surprised you didn't see Obsidian Forge. Yeah, I think Soul Snatcher with Obsidian would be a natural combination, but
Yep, I've got a deck that I have that's Soul Snatcher Obsidian Forge that I used to play quite a bit. I like it a lot. Got a Might Makes Right Soul Snatcher deck, which is fun too. But yeah, didn't see those so much. Seems like maybe a missed opportunity.
And
so
that
I know
is the list of artifacts used and some of our thoughts on.
So
it is harder to maybe pick an artifact that heavily effect than the other. There. I wonder, was there a Whirlpool matchup? That makes it really.
there may have been. Yeah.
And then you play a deck with a Whirlpool in it too. Like there are some artifacts that are one-ofs, like Whirlpool. Right, so the only way to get them, I think, actually.
Yeah, I think you're right.
But some of these artifacts are one-ofs, so like the chance of ever seeing two people deck, but now you could deck that has two of them. X.
Yeah.
Try for some X.
And for all those still listening and you're like, hey, what does this have to do with me? I didn't play an ABR. Know that you can go and actually have some fun. I'd recommend actually putting it in, but you can manual mode in TCO and you can simply put /add -card, and then you're going to go ahead and type in the card name and you can add it in. So if you say, Hiatus, hey, I've played all my decks, I know all of these in and out, try out something like this, because this game, again, has so many different opportunities for us to try unique combinations and just have fun with it. Whether you're going ahead and shredding them up for Shredder, or playing, sealed reversal, or going ahead and playing with an odd artifact, I think that's what makes Keyforge unique and fun.
You should probably play against someone who knows you're going to do this instead of just
don't just go into manual mode and say boom.
Now my pit lords are extra good.
By going ahead and doing that, the card will go ahead and come out right away into your hand, and then you can just obviously drag it into play, which is kind of fun. We did find a way that when we were practicing, we were typing it in every time it was leaving. Now just go into manual mode and pull it from your discard or from your purge pile and just put it back into play that way. So, but have fun with it. I mean, that's what Keyforge is all about. But yes, let your opponents know. All right, gentlemen, final words.
Well, we're still playing Keyforge and haven't wandered off to some other lesser being.
Yeah, lots of fun to be had, right? Whether it's playing crazy interesting formats like this, right? There's new formats being generated all the time. Maybe in the future we'll talk about Newton, or we'll talk about Gateway, or we'll talk about some of these interesting new formats. Or just go play Sealed with some folks and have a good time.
Yeah. Come play Sealed with these folks.
Yes, these folks. Yes.
Yeah. I mean, we want to encourage you. So there's Sealed and there's Archon that's happening. So Sunday at 8:30. No, 8 CST. There you go. 8 CST on Sunday, and then 8 on Tuesday CST, and then 7
on Wednesday.
There you go. So, but there's options to be able to play, and again, to see that it's maxed out, that's awesome. We're still having fun, so come join us, have some fun. The chat is very lively, so I think that's a great piece. The other piece that I want to put out is, I know a couple weeks back that we had heard some feedback. So if you have any feedback for the show, yes, you can go ahead and message any of us. There is an email, but I'm also going to go ahead and reach out. So if you need feedback, if you want feedback, go ahead and you can send it to me, and I'll try and go ahead and send that information to Wookie. But it is J.R. Gradel, Gradel @gmail.com. There you go. You'll get feedback from me.
I'm signing you up for adult entertainment right now.
That is exactly what I expect from you. But no, if you want some feedback for Keyforge and for Archon's Corner, we'd love to be able to hear from you. And I do value the feedback from the community. That's why I'm still here. I love the community. So if I can help you, it's not going to just be sent to spam. Obviously, in the title,
don't
I'd like
email
to
it to me. I've got a round file. But that's why I go ahead and say I'll take the time. Put that it's Keyforge, and that's how we can get some more ideas, and hopefully we'll be able to see you on the Crucible. Outside of that, you can also get a hold of me, Ewok Jr. on Discord. Where can they get a hold of you guys, or you're just saying it's around Discord file? I totally respond on Discord.
Mm-hmm. So I'm Drascore all over Discord, most of the Keyforge channels. Feel free to ping me and be happy to chat.
Keep forging, everyone.
Happy forging.